Hey, Laura Ingalls Wilder fans. We're here in Walnut Grove, standing in front of the original.
It's Saturday, July 18th at 7 p.m. live from the Peterson Tech campus of the Westbrook Walnut Grove High School. I'm your host, Wendy Rogatsky. This is my 14th year in the Laura Ingalls Wilder pageant, and I have been involved both on stage, backstage, and behind the scenes on the Wilder pageant committee. Pa has been working hard on the house and started a butcher shop for the summer. Doc Hoyt and Nellie Olson are down in the dumps, but they will bounce back. It is good to see them and to continue Laura's Prairie Summer, a 6-part mini-series over the next 2 weekends. We have a mixture of live and recorded scenes, special guests, and more. This is episode 4, Brotherly Love. Yesterday, we stopped at the Laura Ingalls Wilder Museum in Walnut Grove and selected a lot of new reading material. We did have a few technical issues yesterday. I think one of the wagon wheels was broken. We visited with author William Anderson, one of the elders of Laura Research. With our wheels back on the wagon, we thought it would be nice to visit some of the younger Wilder authors and presenters. We sent out telegrams, and faster than the Pony Express, we got a response. Melanie Stringer sent a courier with her note. She is an interdisciplinary public historian, museum specialist, and owner of Meet Laura Ingalls Wilder, LLC, presenting over 250 living history programs in 9 states since 2010. Wendy McClure got in touch with us by carrier pigeon. She is a columnist, book editor, and author of Wilder Life, My Adventure in the Lost World of Little House on the Prairie.
Hello.
Please welcome Wendy McClure and Melanie Stringer.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Melanie, what started your passion for history and Laura Ingalls Wilder?
Well, if you can believe it, I learned how to read by reading Laura's books. Quite literally, like sitting on my dad's lap, and he would take my finger and parse out one syllable at a time. And by the time I was in my early teens, I was bugging a very patient librarian, asking questions about why the books were considered children's historical fiction instead of autobiography. And she took me to the stacks in the library and pulled out a bunch of titles that were published in the 1920s and 30s, so a little earlier and then contemporaneous with when Laura was writing her books. And the books that she selected for me were titles that talked about traveling on the Oregon Trail and westward expansion, and they were mostly, diaries and letters that people had kept when they were on these trails, around Laura's time or a little before her. And she was teaching me about the difference in genre from, something that's a first-person account versus something that is researched and then edited and compiled. And before I knew it, I just was eating up anything I could find like that, and it has not stopped in all these decades since. So it's just something that's always been a driving force, is understanding the context and wanting to know more of the fuller story, what's really going on in the world around Laura, not just in her family, but in the places that she's at and in the wider world around her, whether it's, politics, religion, different interesting pieces of the geography and, why are people moving so much? All of those things have just really driven me for many, many years.
Okay. Wendy, your book title refers to the lost world of Little House. How did you come up with that title?
I think we wanted to get across the idea that the world of the books was something I really wanted to get back into. My story is I read the books as a kid. I never actually owned them. I always just had copies from the library. And although I memorized where the books were in the library, and, I could trace my steps and find out where, the hardcovers were, and then also find them on the paperback racks. And then, so because I didn't have, a set, I wasn't one of those kids who reread the books every year. I didn't read them again for decades. And then when I did rediscover them, and I think I came across the first book I had, I actually just had one copy of Little House in the Big Woods. And that I had unearthed after many years, and I read it. And then my husband brought home the box set. And so, it just really kind of hit me right away. Like, I want to go to the world of the books. And it was like, kind of like the idea that I was like visiting like Narnia or Oz, but, it fascinated me. Like, I could go there. I mean, when I was a kid, I always kind of hope that on camping trips, my parents might, drive by the log cabin or something, in Kansas, because we did drive through Kansas on one, family vacation. But it never occurred to me that you could actually go there. For some reason, I never thought to ask my parents, if we could go to Walnut Grove or, anything like that. So then as an adult, I thought, wow, I have a car, I have money, I can go to these places. And so the sense of it sort of being, this world from my childhood sort of opened again. And so that's what I wanted to get across in the title. And then when I, visited all, Walnut Grove and all these places, I was so amazed that the world was there, and sort of just as I remember from the books.
Okay. So this question is for both of you. What continues to fascinate and drive you to follow and research Laura Ingalls Wilder?
Well, for me, I think it's interesting how, with all the books that have been published about Laura, there's still so much that we don't know. And that missing information is what I'm always on the quest for. Just finding out more of the story, especially the years that are particularly thin in information. The probably 2 decades or so leading up to Laura actually publishing the books, we don't know a whole lot other than her journalism career. We don't really know a lot of the nitty-gritty details, and especially we don't know very much at all about Rose's childhood. Mm-hmm. So at least we know myth, we don't know a whole lot of fact. So that always fascinates me, that there's just so much missing. So,
Wendy, how about you?
I really like seeing how the larger world encounters the Little House books and how that relationship has changed over the years. I think, it seems like different generations and even different cultures get different things out of the books. And I love sort of seeing, how that works. I always want to know more about how people in Japan relate to Laura Ingalls Wilder ever since they were introduced to their books after World War II. I think that is such a cool story. And, what is it about the books that, made them, fall in love with them? And I think the books tell us a lot about our own country. Not just, the 1870s, but the Great Depression, and even during the 1970s when the TV show came out. And there's so many cool facets, and I really love that.
Okay. Throughout your research, were there any events or information that surprised you or was unexpected? Wendy, we can start with you this time.
Well, yeah, my research was really more just sort of experiencing things from the books and traveling places. So one of the experiences, I had no idea that churning butter doesn't take hours and hours, because there was something about that, the way that scene in Little House in the Big Woods is written, where, Ma was churning, but sometimes when she was tired, she let Mary have a turn. I'm like, oh, this must take a long time. And so the first time I got a Crock and Dash churn and churned butter and realized it didn't take long at all. So that was unexpected. So things like that. I didn't expect it would be so hard to get my hands on a green pumpkin to make the long winter pie. When you don't have a pumpkin patch, for some reason, I thought, you could go to the store and get a green pumpkin, but it turns out you actually have to sort of really hit up a guy at the farmer's market and, ask him to bring you one the next week. So stuff like that. All that stuff was new and kind of a surprise. And, and so it was really fun finding all that stuff out.
Melanie?
So one of the things that absolutely bowled me over was when I decided that I was going to present living history as an adult but not yet famous Laura. Very early on in that research, I discovered that Laura's paternal great-grandfather, so Charles's father's father, was born in Sandown, New Hampshire. I'm a native and a lifelong resident of New Hampshire. Sandown is about 20 minutes from where I did most of my K through 12 schooling. And that just really messed with me because as it turns out, I had also gone to college in the foothills of the White Mountains. And when that same great-grandfather of hers was a young man, he was living in the town next to the town where I had gone to college. And I have this tendency to do what I call checking out old cemeteries. Ancient cemeteries are a thing of mine. And when I was first in college, I had my first car. Whenever I just needed to take a break from things, I would get in the car and I'd seek out an old cemetery. And I actually found cemeteries that had the Ingalls surname in them. So then all these years later, I decide I'm going to do this. And I find this out about Samuel Worthen Ingalls being born in my state. And I was on a quest, and I'm like, oh, where were those cemeteries where I used to see the Ingalls name all the time? So that is something that actually led to the monograph that I'm working on now, where I'm discussing the history of the first 8 generations of the Ingalls family from the time they landed in America to the time that Charles was born in Western New York.
That's fascinating. Wendy,
Yeah.
has anything about the quarantine felt particularly Little House to you?
A little bit. I mean, maybe less so now that it's summer, but in the first few months, I was trying to bake some bread, and then that sort of sense of having to go grocery shopping, only once in a great while, and trying to sort of be resourceful and make things last. And I found myself sort of thinking, like, what would Ma do? Would Ma throw out this lettuce? What would, but, so it was a lot. I think a lot of the cooking stuff, especially, felt very, very Little House. Yes.
So, Melanie, Laura Ingalls Wilder's writings have been criticized for being culturally insensitive. What is your perspective about these concerns?
I think they're very legitimate, and I think it's important that folks recognize this, and that we understand that there are a lot of things in the books that were painful for people to read, even when the books were being published. And when I say that, I'm not attacking Laura. I think it's important for people to understand, too, we can love somebody, but not love everything about them. And in her work, there are times when she uses slurs. And these were slurs even when she was writing. But as a white woman in a rural area, it might not have been in her knowledge base to understand that these were slurs or why they were slurs. But there were certainly Native Americans and African Americans who were very outspoken about this. People like W.E.B. Du Bois. The Oneida Nation in upstate New York had made statements about these sorts of pieces of language, not specifically about Laura, but about some of the terms that show up in her books. So I think it's important when you look at the context of her work to understand that although some people, like Laura, might have used those words, it doesn't mean that they were acceptable at that time. It means that not everybody was aware of what Native American culture and African American culture, what they found acceptable at all. And I think even today we have a hard time sometimes stepping out of our own perspectives. And, as a white woman, obviously I realize, I'm saying this knowing that I probably grew up with a lot of very questionable notions that I've had to unlearn myself. So I think it's very important that we pay attention to this and that we don't just chalk it up to, oh, well, that's how everybody talked back then, because it certainly isn't how everybody talked back then. It's how some people who were not as aware were speaking, and the portrayals as well. There's a lot of mythology. There's a lot of pieces of information that if you were a white person in rural America, you were hearing different things than if you were perhaps Osage or if you were Ojibwe or if you were Lakota. So I think we just have to acknowledge that and try a little harder, maybe a lot harder. to understand those contexts. There's a great resource through Minnesota, actually, through the Minnesota Historical Society, and it's called the Absent Narratives Project. And for anybody who's interested in learning more about how we can unpack a lot of that really problematic material, the Absent Narratives Project is a good resource for that.
Okay. Since we're talking about other works and writers, how would you compare Wilder's writings to those other writers and works? And would you recommend any of them for those who enjoy her works?
I do have one recommendation, and actually I feel like it dovetails nicely with everything Melanie was talking about. I think Melanie's points were wonderful about the cultural, insensitivity issue. And I think, listening, seeing the other side. And a book came out recently called Prairie Lotus by Linda Sue Park. I have a copy here. It's probably going to show up backwards if I hold it up. I don't know how that works. But it's a middle grade novel. And it is, it's kind of in conversation with the Little House books. And it's about a Chinese American girl who moves to a South Dakota town that is much like De Smet in around 1880. So it's sort of imagining, what, a place like the little town of Prairie, would have been to a girl who would have been seen as very different in that time and place. And it's for readers age 8 and up, but I think anyone who is a fan of the books would enjoy it as an adult. I think she really, gets into that sort of same sense of place, and also how things are made. I mean, Linda Sue Park is, she grew up loving the books, and it shows. That's one huge recommendation. How about you, Melanie? Do you have anything you'd recommend?
Well, as a museum specialist, the work of Amy Lonetree, I think, is extremely important. She is Native American and a museum specialist, and she has written extensively about how to decolonize museums and how to tell Native American stories using Native American scholars and highlighting their work and highlighting things. So, for example, in Laura's books, there's references to the Minnesota Massacre. And if you look at it from the perspective of anyone who was involved in that, who is Native American, they're going to look at it as this is a war. It's not one-sided at all. The losses were pretty much equal on the two sides of that conflict. And talking about that in real terms, real numbers, using data to back up your information, and kind of talk back to the narrative that is very white-centered and that has been told over and over and over again for more than 100 years in museums and in history institutions. So Amy Lonetree is definitely somebody to take a lot of notice of and follow some of her advice.
Well, in continuing along that same line, we cannot speak of Wilder's works without considering other works that it has inspired, including movies, plays, and television series. What value do they add or detract from the messages that she sought to convey?
Well, this is something that's always interested me is, again, like what I was saying before about, I feel like every generation, every culture sort of brings its own relationship to the Little House books. And so, for instance, there is an adaptation of The Long Winter for radio during, that, came out in the 1940s. And, when you listen to that, there's all kinds of subtext about, World War II. And, the way they interpreted The Long Winter is really interesting because I think it's Pa who goes out to get the wheat and, sort of echoing, all these, fathers who are going off to fight overseas, and and just this, when you listen to it, like, oh, this is about World War II. It's The Long Winter, but this is what it's about. And I think for the same reason, I think there's a lot in the TV show Little House on the Prairie, the 1974 show that really speaks to the 70s and 80s. I mean, I think that was a show about the 70s, in a lot of ways that, I think sort of took on these, sort of issues of, mom going back to work or, integration in our neighborhood in a really friendly way. I kind of, that's another thing that I love about the Ingalls Wilder and the Little House books is that, it just keeps expanding in terms of, sort of cultural meanings.
Melanie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a historian, but full disclosure, I would not be here if it weren't for the TV show. That show was on TV when I was just a baby, and my mom was watching it. And she was fascinated with the interplay between Mrs. Ingalls and Mrs. Olson. She thought they were hilarious. And so she started having me watch the show. And one day my parents noticed that the show was based on this series of books, because my parents had never heard of these books at all. They grew up in the East, and they didn't have any relationship to the Midwest. And the books, there's a lot of difference in the East versus the Midwest as far as how well people know who Laura is. Out here, I've had a lot of people say, who? And then if I say Little House on the Prairie, they're like, oh, yes, of course I know, But if I say Laura Ingalls Wilder, they don't always know who I'm talking about. And so the reason I got those books as a very small child was because my parents were watching the TV show, and they just noticed that credit line that there was a series of books. And so I have to thank the show for being really entertaining, and all the people that are on the show that made it so much fun to watch. And there's a lot of anachronisms, and there's a lot of, kitschy, because it is very 70s. It's a very 70s show. Yes. But to this day, people watch it and they're engaged. And a lot of times they ask questions. I get questions every single time I present. I get questions about how much of the show is real. Yes. And people want to know more. Yes, so I think it brings people to history. It brings people to her books.
It's a great introduction.
That is very true. Our time is rounding up, so I'd like to thank both you, Melanie and Wendy, for being our guests this evening. Mrs. Fitch said she would tell us about her chickens and give us some fresh eggs today if we helped her feed and pick eggs. You can both come along to help. Any last thoughts or a favorite Laura quote before you help us bring in some firewood?
Whenever I'm a little bit upset and frustrated, especially in the last few months, I always have to remind myself, swearing is such a foolish habit.
Well, I think about Laura when Manley gave her a newfangled butter churn that she didn't like at all. She wanted her old Crock and Dash churn. And finally, her solution to this newfangled churn is she went out the back door and she said she dropped it just as far as she could.
Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care.
While we head over to the chicken coop, I'll tell you about the online More Than Laura Nellie Challenge and the PA Lookalike Contest. The winners will get to share with us live on the last weekend, July 24th and 25th. No big prizes, but certainly bragging rights and personal satisfaction, and a pen from the maple tree on the Ingalls school site. Maybe she dreamed under that tree. Who knows? There are 4 categories for the online More Than Laura Nellie Challenge. A, ages 6 to 8, B, ages 9 to 12, C, ages 13 and up, and D, pets. And yes, I said pets. For more details and a registration form, email us at laurasprairiechallenge@gmail.com. That's laurasprairiechallenge@gmail.com. Across the country, indoor and outdoor theaters are on extended intermissions. Thank you for the donations coming in from last night. Our Laura's Prairie Summer Series is free to watch online for a month, but as each of you knows, the expenses don't just stop because the income is dropped to zero, as each family knows. Donate to us or another worthy cause if you are able. Thank you.
The Masters store and hall fed boarders from the hotel. I am preparing the evening meal. Doc Hoyt is not his usual cheerful self, and I have just received a letter that may hold the answer as it tells about a missed opportunity from the master store of history.
I hear little Nan. Should I go rock her back to sleep?
No, Laura, that is a grandma's job. You stay here and help Lottie and Nan prepare supper. The boarders will be expecting something hot and tasty in an hour. Doc Hoyt will be joining us this evening.
We haven't seen him in a while. He must be very busy.
I heard he went to see Dr. Starr on business.
I think that was just an excuse to see his daughter Fanny.
I remember her visit here a while back. She was so kind and cheerful.
It was so sad. My Aunt Mattie, rest her soul, had her eyes set on the good doctor, and she pursued him like a pack of wolves.
She had some sort of condition, so she could never do a lick of work or help us clean or feed folks.
Well, she did have plenty of time to fix her hair and make herself pretty, and practice her charms on Dr. Hoyt.
I wondered why she never helped out.
Some folks just aren't turned out to do anything but stare at a mirror all day.
Fanny would pitch right in and hum a cheerful tune.
What's past is past. Little Nan went right to sleep with a few soft words from Grandma. How are the potatoes coming? Almost ready? Keep stirring the soup and check the roast. Laura, would you please go get more wood? We'll need to keep things hot in case our guests are late.
Yes, ma'am.
I got a letter from Fanny Starr today. I've been afraid to open it. That girl deserves a good future. I'm afraid if she stays with Dr. Hoyt, it will be nothing but trouble.
Doc Hoyt can be charming.
Charming is fine for dating, but that does not always turn into responsible and clean living, needed to raise children and make a family. He let his weakness lead him. It led him to heartache.
Maybe I shouldn't have overheard this, but the day before Fanny left, I do recall hearing loud noises and some crying coming from the parlor. It was Doc, Fanny, and Maddie. The next day, Fanny sat by herself and left them on the train early. Maddie was as perky as can be.
Oh, Doc Hoyt is here early. Do not ask him any questions. If he wants to talk, he will on his own time. Lottie and Laura, please serve the good doctor.
Right away.
Thank you, girls. This looks just fine.
Call it if you want more. We keep it hot on the stove.
Very kind, but no. This will be more than enough. Not very hungry.
He looks so sad. Perhaps he'd be happy to tell his problems to an old grandma. But first I should read Fanny's letter. It might help me get an idea of his mood.
Dear Mrs. Masters, Dr. Hoyt left on the train yesterday. His frame of mind was confused and angry. We did have a couple long conversations. I thought it was best to share part of it with you so that you may not think ill of me and in time look more kindly on poor Dr. Hoyt. I was deeply crushed, as you know, when he decided to marry Maddie Masters. She did not treat me well, and now I understand that she was very jealous and had done a number of desperate things that a lady should not do to grab a hold of Dr. Hoyt. I am not sure that he had a good sense of affairs as they played out, but the result was that he could not marry me in good conscience, and may have been under a spell, so to speak, though a deliberate plan by Maddie. Still, I was saddened to hear that Maddie died shortly after they married. It was a crushing blow for him. He traveled here to consult with my father, but it was apparent to me that he was broken and looking for comfort. We talked about their short marriage, which was a tortured affair. It did not surprise me when he asked me to marry him. I told him it was too soon and that I had to move on with my life, and he should also. My heart is not hard, but I could not find any joy in his company and knew that whatever spark had been there had died. Perhaps as you will see him, no doubt, as capable as he is as a doctor, his other skills are lacking. He barely knows anything about keeping a house or proper cooking. Without your cooking and housekeeping, he might well fade away. I am well, and Father sends greetings. I know you are wise, as you have helped many through difficult times. I trust that you may offer him some comfort and guide him back to a productive path. With kindest regards, Fanny Starr.
Buddy, take the good doctor a slice of pie, and Nan, 2 good cups of coffee. Clean up the kitchen and take the night off. I plan a long visit with the good doctor.
Hey, Laura Ingalls Wilder fans. We're here in Walnut Grove, standing in front of the original Walnut Grove school site where Laura would have attended school. If you look at that huge maple tree that's been growing there next to the school site, you'll notice a large limb that is missing. The limb from this tree that would have been around during the time Laura attended school here has been reclaimed and hand-turned by a local Walnut Grove craftsman into 3 separate one-of-a-kind ink pens that you can win by entering into one or more of our contests. Join our family and submit your entry for a chance to win one of these unique pens made from a tree that there's a good chance Laura herself visited when she was here. To see more of the unique craftsmanship from the pen turner, visit their Facebook page at Rick and Lori Wakefield Hand Turned. Bonnie's Boutique in Clyde's Cave, located downtown Tracy at 163 3rd Street, featuring a large selection of women's clothing from sizes small to 3X, shoes, accessories, and a large selection of all-natural bath and beauty products for both men and women. Gift selections from inspirational to fun items for all ages. Several vendors display their handmade creations throughout the store. A total of 8 vendors currently active within the store. Items including jewelry, gift items, repurposed materials in hand-turned pens, wine bottle stoppers, hand-painted wine bottles and glasses, and much, much more. COVID-19 items also available. Nice selection of masks, hand sanitizers, and cleaning products. Thank you from Bonnie's Boutique in Clyde's Cave. And remember to shop local.
Am I supposed to read?
We're live.
Okay. Tonight's Main Street Food for Thought brought to you by the Olson Mercantile. These are community people. They are your neighbors. Do business there whenever you can to keep the community alive. Getting along with others and understanding yourself can be very difficult. Nellie Olson has a difficult time taking her brother's advice. And why should she? Here is a touch of brotherly love.
Nellie, is that you? What are you doing out here by the horses? Go away! You're fine, right? I never heard you cry before. Just leave me alone. I heard you yell and scream and threaten. Stop it, Lily! Please! You just said please. This must be serious. I'm sorry. I'm listening. You can't help. No one can. I can't even figure out what to do. Oh, come on, Nellie. Are you hurt? Should I run for help or get the doctor? It's worse than that. Worse? Gosh, Nellie, I haven't seen you this nonsense. Silas Rude led Genevieve Masters home after spelling school. Are you lovesick? No. It's not about a stupid boy. Lauren and Genevieve won't even play with me. I've got the prettiest clothes and the best candy and the nicest store. They should like me. What's wrong with them? Not the nice clothes, Nope, couldn't be the candy. Yours is the best money can buy. No one has as nice store as our parents. I figured out Nellie, but I don't know if I should tell you. You don't know anything. I'm around you a lot, so I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is. But it may surprise you. So hurry up and tell me. Nah, you don't want to hear it. Oh, but I do. I'll give you my allowance. No, how about the candy Mommy keeps for me and locked her in the storeroom? Very tempting. Okay, help me out here. Do you like being told what to do? No. Do you like when people make fun of you, call you stupid? Certainly not. That would make me very mad. What if they made fun of your clothes or your hair? Ooh, they wouldn't dare. I have it. Do unto others as. What are you saying? Nellie, I'm talking about you. That's how you treat them. Wait, how can you say that? I'm almost perfect. Yes, Nellie, you are more than perfect. You are perfectly awful.
I don't think that is quite over. Let's join the town council.
Things had changed in Walnut Grove in that year. In March of 1879, the first village council was elected, and I have the minutes of that meeting right here. Let's see. Mr. Elias Fiedel was elected mayor. Mr. William Olson was treasurer. My pa got the post of Justice of the Peace with 23 votes. It was quite a meeting, as Pa described it. I wasn't there, of course. Remember, we women didn't vote in those days.
Good to see you. Here we go again.
Really? How dare you say those terrible things about me? Now give me back that big candy or smash your stupid head with it. You give it to me fair and square. Besides, you can't smash me with it if you don't have it. You little brat! You will never do this to me again. What makes you so sure?
William, do something so we can get this meeting started.
I baked a couple of my famous lemon pies for the town council. Maybe they'll look at who they elected more carefully.
Mother, Willie took my candy. Now you got me with the pinchers.
Willie, Nellie, this is a town council meeting. Leave at once. Go! Scoot!
Willie put some in the pies. I did not. William, do something!
Children, enough! You have disgraced your mother and... Not bad. A little sour. Maybe a little more sugar.
Sour! Indeed! Oh, Willie! Nellie! I am so embarrassed! How did you do this to me?
Dear, you're just as beautiful as the day I met you.
And you, William. Well.
Now quiet! Now that we have a duly elected governing body, this meeting and those henceforth will be conducted in an orderly parliamentary manner. Ladies, please, we are trying to have a meeting.
I certainly got a face full. I mean an eyeful tonight. Town council.
Wait till the women get the right to vote.
Now that's not going to happen.
Oh, just you wait. One of these days, we will be running the show.
I already do, don't I, sweetie?
Ingalls did enjoy her chickens. Maybe she learned a thing or two from Mrs. Fitch. She was happy to share some eggs and advice. Laura's Prairie Summer shares some of our sun and rain and a bit of breeze to cool and stimulate your thoughts and dreams. Laura's Prairie Summer series is free to watch online for a month. Let us know what you think on email, Facebook. Like most theaters, our entire season income is zero. Donate if you are able, and if not to us, to others in need. Thank you from the cast, crew, and greater community that shares Laura's Prairie Summer with you. Another of Laura's Prairie challenges is the Paw Lookalike Contest. Bearded or clean shaven, show us your inner pioneer. Email photos to laurasprairiechallenge@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. The Laura Ingalls Wilder Museums are opening with caution and restrictions. Check their websites so you know what to expect.
Chickens are kind of simple animals to raise. They need food and water in a safe place. They usually will lay an egg every day, but they don't usually start laying until they're 16 to 20 weeks old. Chickens come in many different varieties. I have some Rhode Island Reds. They are probably the sweetest disposition. My Crescent Polish Holly, she's temperamental, but she lays nice white eggs for me. There's many different kinds of chickens, and some of them lay more eggs than others. Some lay white eggs, some lay brown eggs, green, bluish eggs, but they all taste the same. Some people feel that they like the brown eggs because the shells are a little tougher, but some of that is just because of what they eat too. They need grit to pick on and to digest their food. Well, these chickens are about 10 weeks old and they won't start laying yet. They're different kinds. There's a barred rock over there, and Easter egg layers, I guess they're called. They will lay different colored eggs. Chickens will start laying about 16 weeks old. These are only about 10 weeks old, so they've got a little ways to go here, but they won't lay eggs all year round. The weather starts turning cold, they go into a molt, and when they lose their feathers, they start to get their winter feathers, and in the wintertime, they don't lay as much. Some don't lay at all until spring. The best laying ones are the leghorns and the white chickens. Chickens make different sounds, and they usually have a cackle sound when they are ready to lay some eggs. They lay 1 egg a day, and sometimes 2. You don't need a rooster, but if you want to hatch eggs, as I have, to raise new breeding stock, then you need a rooster to fertilize the eggs. I like to have a rooster around because those roosters tend to kind of guard their little hens. Roman is our rooster. He protects the girls. We've got Pearl and Ruby and Iris and a Polly. Polly is a crazy hen. She's very flighty. She's a different breed. She's a Polish Crescent, and the red chickens are Rhode Island Reds, and the white is a cross with the Leghorn. When I was first married, we had a rooster that attacked me because he didn't like my yellow dress. And Mr. Fitch didn't like that very much. He decided that was going to have to go, so that rooster had his head chopped off and became chicken soup. Let's go inside. Oh, goodness gracious. Look. We've got Holly's egg. She has the white eggs. And Pearl and Iris, and here's a couple more down here. You don't have to clean them off. They have a natural protection on them. But washing them with rubbing them off and washing them a little bit, and they'll keep for a long time. But they need these roosts to sit on and protect themselves at night. Safe place where they can be protected from stuff that can get them, like the chicken hawks, and raccoons are terrible. And of course, there's nothing better than to have eggs for breakfast. But if you take good care of them, they'll take care of you and provide you. each have to take care of each other. I don't know, I just love my chickens. Maybe someday you'll raise them, Laura. Well, thanks for coming.
Next weekend, watch for episode 5 on Friday, July 24th with guests Allison Arngrim, everybody's favorite Nellie, and Barb Boosted, who has fascinating things to share about Laura's weather. And episode 6 on Saturday, July 25th will finish the season with guest Pamela Smith Hill, an American authoress with many works including Laura Ingalls Wilder, A Writer's Life, and Laura Ingalls Wilder's Pioneer Girl, the annotated autobiography. Laura, are those eggs done yet? I'm hungry. This job gives me an appetite. Hopefully you folks will have an appetite for more Laura Ingalls Wilder next weekend. See you next Friday night at 7 p.m. Central Time when the Wilder pageant brings you episode 5, Welcome Home, of our 6-part mini-series, Laura's Prairie Summer.
As the sun is falling slowly, I will whisper a song for you, a song about feeling all day, not to forget. If a dream could tell a story, if the story could come true, then we would write a legend, play the parts, see yesterday, close your eyes, drift away, let the sun warm your heart, and the wind blows fragments of a dream in silence. Walk together, memories lead the way. You can feel our dreams are magic, like a vision. They fade away. Close your eyes, drift away, let the sun warm your heart, and the wind blows fragments of a dream.